If you have not watched the previous videos, please check out in the channel. The video begins by showing the fourth Prince Han Yu and General Ji Wuai discussing recent events and the risks lurking above the Han Emperor. He questioned Ji Wuai of taking the responsibility of Prince Han Fei. The fourth prince then warns Ji Wuai of the risks of gambling for high stakes. While in the dungeon, Han Lian attacks Yang Lingji angrily but is not strong enough and soon upperhanded by Yang Lingji. Tianzi arrives and tells Yang Lingji to stop playing. He then sets a fire circle around Han Lian and teaches her the meaning of her name, that the red lotus is a flower of vengeance. Meanwhile, Wei Zhuang frees Wang Gui from the prison. At the palace, the fourth prince and Prime Minister Zhang questioned Ji Wuai about how his troops arrived in force only after Tianzi had left. Meanwhile, at the home of the crown prince, Han Qianshan kills the zombie guards and sends a signal for the Han troops to enter. Han Fei meets up with the fourth prince, Prime Minister Zhang and Ji Wuai to discuss the current situation. With the emperor absent from imperial court and the crown prince captured, he proposes a temporary head of state be nominated. They agree, and appoint the fourth prince, much to Ji Wuai's displeasure. Still trying to rescue the crown prince, Moya endlessly battles imaginary wraiths created by Bai Juwang's poison. He eventually manages to resist Bai Juwang's poison and conquer his fears, striking back at Bai Juwang and wounding him. However, Moya is still too weak to continue and sends Bai Feng to stop Bai Juwang and rescue the crown prince. On the contrary, Xinyu sends Nanyu to the palace to report on what is happening. Meanwhile, Bai Feng encounters the archer Han Qianshan, trying to kill the crown prince whom Bai Feng only just manages to save from a deadly volley of arrows, and then meets up with Moya. At the Purple Orchid House, Xinyu tells Sir Fang that Han Fei's plans have prevented both the crown prince and the fourth prince from ascending the throne. Also, that the emperor may have withdrawn from state affairs because of the activities of Nightfall and the four fearful warriors. Later, Beauty Hu and Nanyu try to enter the palace, but are turned back by Lady Mingzhu. On the side of the lake, Bai Yifei's informant tells him that in Xianyang, Li Si has met with Zhang Go, a friend of Han Fei. Also, he does know the whereabouts of Han Lian, and says that Tianzi may be plotting his own strategy, greater than just knowing the secret of the reigning fire manor. Meanwhile, Han, along with Sir Fang, examines the ruins of the Cold Palace and deduces that Tianzi's purpose was to obtain information from the library about the gemstone of reigning fire, Ghost Army blocking the road and 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon to further his desire for the restoration of his land. On the other side, Wei Zhuang confronts the Bai'u, Wang Gui, Kushimo, Bai Juwang and Yang Lingji who have Han Lian as their hostage. Then Tianzi appears. After Wei Zhuang appears to insult Han Lian, she no longer wants to be rescued, but Tianzi gives him a small intricately carved medicine bottle as he turns to leave. At the Purple Orchid House, Han Fei tells Sir Fang that he doesn't believe that Tianzi found what he was looking for in the Cold Palace and decides to arrange a meeting with Tianzi. Meanwhile, the fourth prince becomes more suspicious of Ji Wuai's motives and loyalties. He tells Ji Wuai of Enami's changing situation, on which he was surprised to know it. On the other scene, Han Fei's group examine the carved medicine bottle, and deduce it indicates a connection between the palace and the Bai'u. Xinyu suggests that if the bottle came from the palace, they could ask Nanyu to investigate. The scene shifts and Han Lian is returned to her prison, which now is filled with deadly snakes. In her prison cell, Han Lian is surrounded by snakes, but a hornless dragon snake appears to take control. At the palace, although the emperor is reportedly not eating the cooked fish prepared for him by Beauty Hu is returned with its eye missing, the part he likes. The fourth prince asks Qianshan to work with Ji Wuai even though he does not trust the general, but hopes that it may protect the royal father from the Bai'u and Nightfall. Meanwhile, Ji Wuai tells Hu that he's been offered Han Lian by the fourth prince. However, Hu counsels against it and suggests that he support the crown prince instead. Moya reports to Ji Wuai that Bai Juwang has transferred the crown prince and that there is a possibility that Han Qianshan may assassinate him. Back in the prison cell, as Han Lian is confronted by the hornless dragon snake, a Crimson King snake appears to defend her. Using the pretext of delivering cakes, Sir Fang and Beauty Hu manage to pass the carved medicine bottle to Nanyu under the watchful eyes of Lady Mingzhu. In Han Lian's prison cell, the Crimson King snake attacks the hornless dragon snake, and after a vicious struggle, the Crimson King snake emerges victorious. Meanwhile, Non-Yu enters the royal incense room searching for the familiar scent she detects in the carved medicine bottle and finds it. However, while there, she witnesses a meeting between Lady Mingsu and Bai Yifei, whom she calls cousin. Bai Yuang enters Han Lian's cell, explaining that there are hundreds of poisonous snakes in the poisonous pit who feed on each other, absorbing each other's poison, becoming more toxic and leaving the venomous snakes victorious. Surprisingly, as Han Lian laments about her situation, the Crimson King snake consoles her. She then climbs to a high window to help it escape, but the window is protected by a realgar. She wipes it away, and the snake escapes. As Tang Qi and Wei Zhuang watch Bai Yifei arrest some smiths, presumably for refining utensils for the legendary venomous insects, Tang Qi tells Wei Zhuang that although Bai Yifei made his name in the war with Bai, but there is a dark side to him. Meanwhile, Bai Yifei and Lady Mingsu exchange information and potions in the royal incense room. He tells her that General Ji Wuai has been collaborating with the fourth prince more closely than before and both desire the throne. This is all overheard by Non-Yu. However, as she leaves, she suddenly realizes that she has been detected by Bai Yifei. Scene shifts to Han Fei telling the fourth prince and General Ji Wuai that he will support them but nothing should happen to the crown prince. Also that Yanzi's actions are unpredictable, since being freed from the chains and the technique of the legendary venomous insects that restricted him for so long. Han Fei reveals that he learned this from the carved medicine bottle he obtained from Yanzi, who will be seeking revenge. In the palace, Bai Yifei now has Non-Yu and the bottle, but Non-Yu manages to convince him that she is working for Tianzi and that she knows that Bai Yifei was his captor. Meanwhile, Bai Yuang returns to Han Lian's cell to kill the Crimson King snake. He angrily attacks Han Lian for releasing it, but the snake suddenly attacks him to defend her. When he tries to kill the snake, Han Lian stops him, but the dying snake gives her a small glowing crimson ball. Believing it to be poison, she takes it, but instead of dying she survives, and all the snakes become her servants. Long story short, Non-Yu frees herself from her shackles and manages to exit Bai Yifei's chambers while Bai Yifei relays his concerns about Yanzi to Ji Wuai. Non-Yu then finds herself in a tunnel where she finds a woman being slowly drained by red blood-sucking spirit butterflies, the fluid being used to produce the fear that the blood mark was prepared from Bai. She steals a chrysalis and the butterflies attack her, cutting her with their razor-sharp wings, but she manages to escape into the streets where she is rescued by the Chiju clan. Han Fei then presents the chrysalis to Tianzi, offering him the key to freeing himself from his captor, although Tianzi is reluctant to trust the ninth prince. Han Fei wants both the crown prince and Hong Lian in exchange for the chrysalis, but Tianzi says it's not enough and he is forced to choose one. Han Fei chooses the crown prince but then says he wants Hong Lian as well. Wei Zhuang takes Hong Lian from Yanling Ji, while Tianzi suddenly comes under attack from Bai Yifei using his icy crystals. Meanwhile, Wei Zhuang is attacked by Yanling Ji, Bai Yuang, Washwang Gui, and Kushimo. He uses both his sword and combat skills to deflect and thwart their attacks, then reminds them that he is not their real enemy. The Bai fighters then go to the aid of Tianzi, who is still under attack from Bai Yifei. From a distance, Han Fei sees the magnitude of the battle and is concerned about Hong Lian. Wei Zhuang leaves with Hong Lian, curtly telling her to return to Xinzan, but instead she follows him. She finds him suffering from a poisonous wound by Bai Yuang and she draws out the poison, but surprisingly he immobilizes her using her pressure points. After a snake approaches her and leaves, he softens a little towards her, but he ignores her pleas to unlock her acupoints. Later a carriage arrives and the attendants unlock Hong Lian's acupoints and return with her. Meanwhile, as Han Fei and Sir Fang prepare to return to the palace with the crown prince, they see Bai Yifei returning with Yanling Ji as his captive. Hong Lian arrives back at the palace, angry at what she considers Wei Zhuang's rude behavior, however she decides to forgive him. The Han Emperor is pleased at the return of Crown Prince and Hong Lian, giving credit to both General Ji Wuai and Han Fei, although the fourth prince assigns all credit to the ninth prince, Han Fei. Wei Zhuang agrees to meet Hong Lian in the cold palace to teach her martial arts. On his way home, the crown prince's carriage falls off a bridge into the water and he drowns in what is made to look like an accident. General Ji Wuai is furious as he believes this is the work of the fourth prince, Han Yu. Meanwhile, the Han Prime Minister goes to meet the envoy of the Qin Emperor, but finds the envoy murdered by Tianzi. Shortly thereafter, Qin troops appear, massed outside the Han Palace. Meanwhile, while visiting the body of the Qin envoy, Han Fei and Su Fang are greeted by a new envoy at Xinzhen, Li Si. Li Si reminds Han Fei that in the coming negotiations that he will not show any mercy just because they are fellow disciples. Li Si meets the Han Emperor and mentions the lack of respect shown to the Qin over the murdered envoy. General Ji Wuai promises to capture the culprit, but Li Si expresses doubt in his ability to do so and offers to use the Qin army waiting outside the gates. Bai Yifei however rejects the offer and insists the Han will deal with the problem, suggesting that if the Han and Qin are engaged in conflict, only the Chu will benefit. Li Si suggests that the Han Emperor accompany the body to Xianyang as a gesture of sincerity, however Prime Minister Zhang considers it inappropriate. Han Fei diffuses the impasse with some carefully chosen words, but Li Si counters with the proposal that the Han cedes the area of the assassination to the Qin. Han Fei then proposes that if he can solve the case with 10 days or less, the amount of ceded land would be proportional to the time elapsed. Meanwhile, Wei Zhuang and Tang Qi learn that 8 Qin assassins known as the Slick Octahedron have also crossed into the Han state. Later, Bai Yifei foils an attempt by Yan Lingji to escape from prison. The fourth prince suggests that Han Fei took a big risk with his proposal to Li Si, but Han Fei shows his skill in a game with coins called Unbind Victory where the player in the weaker position can use the opponent's greed to defeat them. He suggests that the power of the Qin Prime Minister is strong, whereas that of the ruler is weak. In the Cold Palace, Wei Zhuang gives Hong Lian her first lesson martial arts: trust no one, stay on guard and never relax. Meanwhile, Bai Yifei uses frightening visions from Yan Lingji's past to break her will in hoping she would reveal the location of her master, Tianzi. The other scene, Wei Zhuang and Tang Qi find 4 men of the Qiju clan killed by a single assassin, leaving one survivor who was in hiding. Tang Qi decides to lace a trap with Wei Zhuang's bait to catch the swordsman. That night, the surviving Qiju clan member overhears the assassins talking with the woman Li Wu, but he is easily detected and killed. Meanwhile, as Wei Zhuang walks the dark lane ways, he is ambushed by 4 swordsmen, but he quickly dispatches them. Later he encounters another swordsman at a place referred to as the Heavenly Hinge, the only place in Xinzhen that is both offensive and defensive. They are evenly matched and they fight to a standstill, the swordsman revealed as Wei Zhuang's senior brother. Wei Zhuang introduces his senior brother, Genie, to Han Fei, who had already deduced who he was. After an awkward introduction, Han Fei impresses the skeptical Genie with his wisdom and understanding of politics and power. Later, in a small, secluded garden, Han Fei meets a man wearing white robes and a mask. They have a philosophical discussion about the existence of a power beyond mortals which controls their fates. Then, Han Fei pays his respects to the Emperor of Qin, Yingzheng, who then removes his mask. General Ji Wuai declares a curfew in Xinzhen while Wei Zhuang and Genie speculate on the purpose of presence of the Slick Octahedron. Meanwhile, in the garden, Han Fei cautions Yingzheng on the dangers of traveling to Xinzhen, and in return, Yingzheng refers to the section in Han Fei's essay referring to the dangers of officials with too much influence. That night, 2 carriages leave the house where Han Fei met Yingzheng and are stopped and searched by General Ji Wuai's men, however they find no sign of their quarry, the Emperor of Qin. At the same time, General Ji meets Genie and asks him to surrender his sword for safety. Tianzi and Wushwang appear to break into Bai Yifei's prison and free Yan Lingji. General Ji Wuai finds Li Si in Genie's carriage, but he allows them to pass. On the rooftops, the Slick Octahedron observes Wei Zhuang and Yingzheng, who are disguised as Han soldiers. Zhenhu of the Slick Octahedron discuss Yingzheng's fighting style, which involves his unusually long sword. At the Cold Palace, Tianzi tells Yan Lingji that he suspects that the treasure of Baiyu and key to the 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon are both located there, the location of an old imperial palace that belonged to the former overlord, Duke Zhuang of Zheng. Suddenly Yan Lingji slaps Tianzi, realizing that he is in fact Bai Yifei in disguise and the situation is an illusion created by Lady Mingzhu. Meanwhile, Genie, Yingzheng, Wei Zhuang, Xinyu and Han Fei meet at the Purple Orchid House, but Xinyu detects that they are being watched by the surveillance bees of Xunfeng of the Slick Octahedron. She kills the bees, however when they do not return, Xunfeng deduces the location of Yingzheng. Li Si tells the Han Emperor that the 5 of the 10 days to capture the Qin envoy's murderer, and threatens to call in the waiting Qin troops to assist. However, Han Fei says that General Ji Wuai has already captured the killer, much to Ji Wuai's surprise. Han Fei names Bai Yifai's Baiyu prisoner Yan Lingji as the culprit, placing Ji Wuai in a compromising position, where he must hand her over to the Qin. Thus, Bai Yifai, General Ji Wuai and Li Si are all cleverly manipulated by Han Fei into accepting his solution to avoid apparent failures in fulfilling their appointed roles. Later, Han Fei again meets Ying Zheng, who compliments him on his talents, fending off the great Qin army with wisdom instead of might, snatching Yan Lingji from nightfall with tricks instead of force, making friends with the Qin envoy without adulation, and turning Yanzi into an ally of quicksand without concession. The Han Emperor calls for Yan Lingji to be brought to the palace while the Slick Octahedron plan their next move to assassinate Ying Zheng. As Han Fei analyzes the current situation, he suggests that the threat to Ying Zheng may come from within the Qin Empire. They also realize that Ying Zheng's habit of holding a long sword was how the Slick Octahedron eventually discovered them. Meanwhile, Bai Yifai delivers Yan Lingji to Li Si as requested, supervised by Genie.